changes happening to every person, just as in the air. Analysis of the theme of humility in Isaac the Syrian's Homily 1.
Thank you, Father, and thank you all the people who are here to listen to this paper, and thanks to Siri too. Before I begin, it might be helpful to say a few words of introduction. As you will know, Isaac of Nineveh, often called Isaac the Syrian, was born in Beth-Catraia in the Persian Gulf in the 7th century. 3 collections of his homilies have been handed down to us, the first of which was translated into Greek very early on. Although he was a monk of the Church of the East, the translation of his writings from Syriac into Greek and his profound spiritual theology led to his being read throughout the Eastern Christian world and beyond. Throughout the entire corpus of his writings, Isaac exalts humility over all other virtues. He causes the soul to spiritual life, and for him it is the door to mysteries as to resemblance to Christ. We all have our ideas about what humility is, but what does Isaac mean by it? This question is the subject of this paper and will be approached through an analysis of homily 72 of the first part of his writings. In particular, I will focus on 3 themes which may help to start circumscribing Isaac's concept of humility, the notion of change and its implications, and the 2 antithetical dangers of desperation and exaltation. In our life, we all are confronted with setbacks and painful states, to which we react in different ways. Isaac's reflection explores this vital issue. I aim to show that for him, humility is the capacity of being in relationship with the suffering of life and with the mutability of the human condition, discovered through a demanding process of becoming aware, in which the person's illusions about himself are unmasked. Isaac did not write in a vacuum, but was profoundly influenced by earlier spiritual writers. So in order to understand his thought, I wish to begin by looking at some related ideas in Macarius, a 5th century ascetical writer from Syria, although Isaac, along with all pre-modern theologians, believed that he had lived in the Egyptian desert in the 4th century. In his homily, Isaac mentions 2 letters of Macarius, in particular a passage of one of these letters and one in the handout is extensively quoted and commented throughout the whole homily. This is the passage. Changes should happen to every person, just as in the air. There is the time of cold, and after a moment heat, and perhaps hail, and after a little fair weather. And it is thus for our instruction. There is war and the help of grace, and sometimes the soul is in a tempest, and violent waves assail it. And again, sometimes there is a change, and it is visited by grace, and joy fills the heart, and the peace which is from God. Therefore, if after all these things, chance events, Geshe, which afflict us, press hard, let us not become sad. And in the time of the rest, which is from grace, let us not boast. But in the time of joy, let us contemplate affliction. And in the time of affliction, let us wait for help. Isaac's concept of change and shuklava goes back to this passage. With this term, Macarius means every mental variation, both positive and negative, which follow one another in a person's life, inevitable as the climatic changes in the atmosphere. His belief, which Isaac shares, is that they all serve for a person's instruction. Also, Isaac's concept of chance event, Gesha, goes back to this passage. It denotes only the negative changes, those which are afflicting the person, and which are opposed to the moments of rest and joy. Macarius is suggesting is to expect in both occurrences the possibility of the opposite situation, to avoid the risk of sadness and boastfulness. Isaac will interpret these 2 dangers as desperation and exaltation. But what have changes and chance events to do with humility? To understand this, I wish to concentrate briefly on Macarius' views concerning human existence in this world. For Macarius, this world is the place of a struggle, of an exercise of the individual to find his true destination. The meaning of this world is a crossing through difficult places, he says, through trials and toil to find true life. In this world, however, there are also moments where one perceives the help of God. When this occurs, it is easy to forget that this cosmos is above all the space of a struggle. One might imagine that, since one has had a little rest, one has become free and perfect. In this consists pride, ramusa, and humility is for Macarius the opposite attitude, a subtle form of pride, so that he will conceive of humility as an alternative to both attitudes. But how is humility found? How are the wrong reactions to suffering neutralized? And how is a new approach discovered? This occurs for Isaac only if the person accepts to go through a complex process of becoming aware, which involves watchfulness, memory, the intimate acknowledgement of received. It is a discernment gained through sensibility to suffering and an effort of understanding. I wish now to examine some essential features of this process as they emerge from Isaac's homily in experiences. This recollection teaches a relationship with that suffering that both exaltation and inspiration remove, bringing one back to a realistic perception of oneself. This is not the negative experiences in themselves which lead to humility, but the ability to discern them as to learn from them. Another element in the process of becoming aware is weeping. Before the risk of exaltation, Isaac states, one should weep, remembering the slippery paths trodden in the time of abandonment, so as to gain humility, makikuta, through these themes. Weeping involves consciously recognitions hidden even behind the mind, behind consciousness. Such are often desperation, exaltation, and the drives which move them. The process of discernment and awareness uncovers them, teaching the person to look at what he would instinctively remove from his sight, because it is too painful to real. It is at this point that humility blossoms within. What is humility then? Isaac does not say, at least here. But speaking of the process leading to it, he says that which it dismantles. First of all, it dismantles the idea that perfection means absence of changes, that human life should be protected from the alternation of the winds. This condition for Isaac would not be human. Secondly, it modifies one's attitude before negativity, opposing desperation and exaltation. Both of them are unable to deal with the frailty of the human condition and can be interpreted as defensive mechanisms before the exposure to suffering which being a human implies. The process of becoming aware and discerning indicates the gradual developing of a relational approach to negativity, which instead of taking flight before contradiction, this is a painful process, it is worth going through it, for that which is found makes of us a son of God, he says. This, and not immobility and the perpetual feeling of peace and happiness, is true perfection for Isaac. Without it, he writes, worthless is all practice and virtue and toils. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duca, for this very clear, profound presentation on Isaac of Nineveh. But apart from more academic considerations, you know that the word Nineveh is mentioned, the sentiments we have in our mind, the whole region, what has happened recently in the region of Nineveh, Iraq. Christianity has been completely wiped out. But you remember the great father, Isaac of Nineveh, or Isaac the Syrian. Just one question. Well, at least according to ecclesiastical doctrine, Isaac of Nineveh is within the East Syrian or the so-called Nestorian tradition. But somehow he has cut across the doctrinal barriers, and the Byzantine Orthodox and in the other Orthodox churches, he is considered as one of the acceptable, authentic fathers. What could be the reason for this exceptional things?
Yes. Actually, in particular, the first part of Isaac was translated at Mar Saba before the 9th century, and so it passed into Greek, and from Greek to other languages. And so Isaac is well known in the Christian Eastern world, but also in the West, like in the Latin world, after the 13th century, in the Russian Slavonic world. And I think his stress of humility, solitude, and how can I say, like a deep understanding of the human mind functioning in relationship with God. He has a strong human meaning for today. It's not only something dry, it has to do with human existence, it's something alive, and I think this is the main reason.
Thank you.
I find that there are lots of similarities between the thoughts expressed here and the greater work, the Western work, the imitation of Christ of Thomas Aquinas. Such works available in Germany at that time as sources which could have inspired Thomas Aquinas. And secondly, as any work being written, comparing the thoughts of these fathers with, let us say, the thoughts of Thomas Aquinas.
It might be possible, which is the century, it is 14th, 15th. So it might be possible that something of Isaac was circulating because it had been translated into Latin at this time. But I'm not aware of any kind of connection. I'm sorry.
About Isaac and the Indian thought, Indian monastic thought, because in Indian Hindu thought there is Stita Prajna, which is going beyond the changes. Then this Nirvana, this becoming the Tirthankara, all those thoughts have some similarity in this thought of going beyond the changes. Let us say, reaching the perfection when it overcomes the changes. But as far as I understand your thought. So, but the difference is, in Christian view, of course, it is through the grace and it is through in reference to Christ. Whereas in these religions, it is human effort that slowly raise the soul to this status. So is there any study regarding that, or is possibility of comparing?
Actually, I don't know of any study, but it might be done. I don't know enough Indian thoughts to say of any possible comparison. Just something which is important for Isaac is that it is not really going beyond changes. It is that these changes will be there in a way, even when you reach impassibility, even when you are in a state of impassibility. He often says you will experience changes and you will experience humiliation in the sense of being brought down to your real human condition. So perfection includes imperfection in a way.
Area is an interesting area. The Greek idea of apathia, or the Indian nisargata, they are very, very similar. But you have Neoplatonic roots for that. The Eastern Orthodox fathers also said that. So there is a very large common ground, I think, between the Eastern tradition, the Greek Neoplatonic tradition, and the Indian tradition.
Qatar, translating the works of Isaac. Do you know anything about this project?
I was told something about it. I know there was a conference there, and I think no, I don't know much about it. I know
state of humility where one accepts one's happy moments and also sad moments. What is the final state in which a person can be happy, but as you said, even in the final moment there can be sadness also. What is the aim of this state of being humble?
The aim of the state of being humble.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Isaac, I mean, definitely it is the possibility to reach a relationship with God which is pure, I mean, not passionate in the sense of, pure from your passions and desires and drives and unconscious fears, etc. So to be able to be in a dialogue with God which is authentic and real. And for Isaac, which is very much important, that is a topic which is being explored by Chiara, for instance, a scholar, and other scholars, is the topic of the love for the whole creation. So one of the consequences of that deep dialogue with God will be considering all the other human beings, weak as you are and limited as you are, as sons of God, and then your fellow brothers. So for him it's very, there is this deep solidarity of the hermit with the whole suffering creation. That's another.
Since we are in India, I think we could also look for some Indian sources on some of these topics. I already mentioned the work of Dr. V.C. Samuel on Severus of Antioch and the Macedonian Christology, when Frederick Alpi presented his paper. Well, he was with us, Father Samuel. This book is well known, but I don't know how known is the book in the West. It is published in India. And on the second question which Father you raised, on these similarities, common ground between these areas, there's a very recent book by Paulos Gregorios, Philosophy East and West. It is acknowledged very well by Indian Hindu philosophers as well as by Western Platonic, Neoplatonic philosophers. It's available in Kottayam. So this book deals with some of these issues which you raised, just for information. Thank you, Mr. Duca. So we have come to the end of the session.